Hi, I'm Scientific Illustrator Stephanie Rozzo. Welcome to Nature Sketch Crate's step-by-step Okapi painting instructional video. In this video I'll be showing you how to paint an Okapi by using Nature Sketch Crate's step-by-step painting instructions. Don't forget to click the like button, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and check out naturesketchcrate.com to shop for future lesson crates. First, make sure you have all the materials you need before you get started. Remember, this is just a sketch. Take your time, relax, and don't worry too much if you think you might have made a mistake. Let's get started. Step 1, transfer the image to the watercolor paper. So you'll want to make sure you have the image, the transfer image, taped to the back of the watercolor paper, and it doesn't have to be covering all the edges. It just need to make sure that the image you're transferring and any of the text you're transferring or hole punch lines are over the paper itself. Take your graphite transfer paper, dark side down, light side up, and place it on top of your watercolor paper. I haven't used this piece of transfer paper before, but if you have used yours, you can use it over and over and over. You don't need to use a brand new sheet. And then just trace over the lines to transfer them. And it doesn't need to be exact. This is just a sketch. You just want to gently press that down flat. And I always like to start with one line just to test it out to make sure, for one, that my transfer paper is oriented the right way, dark side down, so that the graphite on the paper is actually transferring with the pressure to the watercolor paper. And I've used a medium pressure. You want to be able to see these lines at the end once you're done doing your painting so that you can redraw them with your micron pens. And go ahead and just go throughout and trace over all of these lines to transfer them. And it doesn't need to be exact. So if you get the lines a little bit off and you're tracing over them, that's just fine. This is just a sketch. These lines don't need to be exact. So don't worry too much if you don't draw the line exactly as you see it. This is just a sketch. It's going to be imperfectly perfect. You can use a fine-tipped pen that has color or a colored pencil with a fine tip if the regular pencil is hard for you to keep track of as you're transferring. And this is meant to be a meditative exercise, transferring these lines. So hopefully you can relax, maybe put on podcast or audiobook or listen to some music, or maybe do this outside and listen to some nature sounds. And just go throughout and trace over all of the lines to transfer them. I'm going to go ahead and transfer the common name and scientific name. My pencil tip is a bit smaller than the common name text, so I just outline the inner black area. And then when I transfer the scientific name, I just draw right over it. When I'm all done, go ahead and flip the image up and down like a flip book to make sure you've transferred all the lines that you want to have transferred. I always end up missing something. And if you still miss a line after this, that's totally fine. You can always add it in later. Just move my eye from one part to the other while flipping it up and down to see if I've missed anything. When you have all the lines transferred, go ahead and remove the graphite transfer paper. Like I said before, you can use this over and over and over, so save that for future use or let a friend use it. And remove the tape from the back of the watercolor paper, and then gently remove it from your transfer image. If you don't have a lot of paper that came off onto your tape, you can use that later. Otherwise, go ahead and compost it or throw it away. And then you can use your transfer image to protect your painting while you're creating it. So maybe your hand might have some grease on it you weren't thinking of, or you just don't want to have any smudges, and you'll pay attention better if you have your transfer image. Or you're mixing your paint and it spatters a little bit. You want this to be covering it up to make sure it doesn't go on there unless you want paint spatters in your image. And this is your image, so make sure to make it your own. If you want to put paint spatters in it, you should totally do that. Next, I'm going to go ahead and take my kneaded eraser. I'm going to knead it to a light gray spot and erase any unwanted graphite marks. So maybe the transfer paper left behind a little bit of graphite. You can also dab it to erase or lighten the lines a little bit. And make sure you use a kneaded eraser. It's much gentler on the paper. It helps the paper retain the surface it needs to make that watercolor look beautiful. Whereas this regular eraser is a little too rough, and it'll rough up the paper and change the texture, and it won't take the watercolor the right way. And I like the way my lines look, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to step 2. Step 2, paint in the Okapi red brown. So first you want to mix the Okapi red brown by taking 1 drop of the 21H sepia. Make sure before using these paints that you shake them up. Sometimes the paint pigment settles on the side, and you want to use the full concentration of the color if possible. These are very vibrant, beautiful colors. 1. And then the 31H red oxide. I want 3 drops of that. 1, 2, 3. Mix it up, releasing a little bit of water from your water brush, or adding some water from your water vessel if you're using a regular paintbrush. And the water brush, if you just press on it just a little bit, it'll release some water. Dab it off onto your towel and then test it out to see that it's the right color and that matches the driest, darkest, or the most concentrated color. So it has more pigment to water, so it's thicker. You can see it's thick, and it doesn't have a lot of water in it. It's mostly paint pigment. It has a dark color, so it's drier because there's less water in it. And that's in our palette, not added to the paper. And then we want a lighter version of this, so it has a little bit more water added to it, so it's a little wetter, but still on the dry side. So I'm going to put on the side here and test it out, see if I've added enough water to it or too much water. Might want a little bit more water to it. Make it a little lighter, so I let a little bit more water go into my palette. And I think that looks about right. And then I'm gonna want a really wet light color, wet and light in our palette, so it appears light on our paper. That looks about right too. So I'm gonna clean up my brush, and I'm gonna pick up this medium version of the color, kind of a dry, dark color, but not the driest, darkest. And I'm going to add it like I see in step 2's image. And I'm going to work left to right on painting this because I'm right-handed and I don't want to smudge the paint while it's wet. And I'm going to add it just like I would with a marker or a pen or crayons, and just kind of fill in that space. And if you see a little bit of wet area here, you can just kind of move it into the new area. And I'm going to work one space at a time. So I'm treating this as a space, and then this is a space. And if you get, like right here, I put some paint here, but it's not in the image, that's totally fine. It's going to be unique every time I paint. It turns out a little bit different. And it's going to be imperfectly perfect and unique to you. And just filling in the space like I would using that marker or crayon, just adding it in. And if the paint starts to get too light, you can just pick up some more, dab it off on your towel, and then continue painting. I'm going to treat this whole ear as one space. If you have too much water or too much paint on your brush, you can also just dab it off onto your towel at any point. Pick up a little more paint, dab it off on my towel, and continue. Again, not being too exact. It's going to be a little different each time. So go ahead and go throughout and paint all that Okapi red brown bee like you see in step 2's image. If you get any paint outside of the lines, that's totally fine. Don't get too worried or caught up with that. This is just a sketch, just a fun practice painting. And then go ahead and clean off your brush so the paint doesn't build up on it. And make sure this is dry before adding the wettest, lightest Okapi red brown. And you can test that by just kind of dabbing your finger over it. So parts of this are dry because we're not adding a lot of water to this, but parts are still wet, like right here. So that's pretty dry, but there's a little bit of areas that are still wet, like right here. And this little dot here. Little space here, there's a little bit more water added to it. But since it's pretty dry, I can go ahead and pick up this color here. And that's A, the wettest, lightest, and has the most water added to it in our palette. I'm take that color, I'm going to add it in like I see in step 2's image. And again, no need to be exact, just add in the same basic area like you would with a crayon or a marker, just filling it in and picking up more, dabbing off your towel, and then adding it in again whenever you run low on color. And just put it in the same basic area. Don't worry too much about being exact. When you're all done, go ahead and clean off your brush, let this dry, and move on to step 3. Step 3, paint in the Okapi umber. So go ahead and mix the Okapi umber by taking 1 drop of the 21H sepia, two drops of the 31H red oxide, one drop of the 32H raw sienna, go ahead and mix it up. You can add a little bit of water to make sure it can move. So if it has just pigment, it might not move very well on your paper. It might kind of get caught as you paint. Dab it off onto your towel and test it out. Looks like the right color. Just a tiny bit more water. Feels better. I'm going to dab it off onto my towel, test it out one more time. Looks good. And then go ahead and add it to your painting like you see in step 3's image. And if you need a finer tip, you can just roll the tip on your towel here and help give you a finer tip. So just go ahead and go throughout and add that color. Or you can move your paper around while painting. You don't have to keep your paper in one spot. I just do that so that it's better for the camera. When I'm not being videotaped, I move my paper a lot while I paint. When you've added all of the Okapi umber, go ahead and let this dry, clean off your brush, and move on to step 4. Step 4, paint in Okapi gold. So go ahead and mix the Okapi gold by taking 1 drop of the 2H gamboge and 1 drop of the 31H red oxide. Mix it up, adding just a little bit of water. Test it out to make sure it's the right color. Looks good. Dab off your brush on your towel just a little bit and add a bunch of water to the side. Test that out. Looks like the right color. I'm going to dab it off on my towel, and then I'm going to add it like I see in step 4's image. Again, like before, I'm not going to be super exact, just going to add it the same basic area like I see in step 4. It's kind of an ugly stage. Trust the process, just keep on going, it's going to look great. Clean off my brush, let this dry, and move on to step 5. Step 5, paint in the Okapi deep brown and red. So mix the Okapi deep brown. Take 1 drop of the 21H sepia. And 1 drop of the 31H red oxide. Mix those up, again adding a little bit of water just to help it flow a bit better. Dab it off onto your towel and test it out on your paper. Looks good to me. We're going to use the driest, darkest, most concentrated version of this color. So this just needs to be able to move well on your paper. I didn't dab it off on my towel so you can see it's leaving a lot of water. Dab it off on my towel and it's moving pretty nice. It's not really getting stuck. If it has too much pigment, it won't move along your paper very well. And then I'm just going to add it to the Okapi just like I see in step 5's image. And so go ahead and go throughout and add that to the Okapi. Once you've added that color, you want to let it dry and then clean off your brush. And you'll want to add the Okapi red. So mix the Okapi red by taking the 2 drops of a 31H red oxide. You could use just 1 drop, but it's kind of nice to have more than 1 drop to work with. Add a little water to that. And you don't want it to be really wet and light or really dry and dark, so you just want to add a little bit of water to the side. And that looks about right. And then go ahead and add it to the Okapi like you see in step 5's image. And if you still have a little bit too much, you can just dab it off onto your towel. And when you're done, go ahead and clean off your brush and let this dry. Move on to step 6. Step 6, paint in the Okapi dark brown. So you want to take 2 drops of the 21H sepia. And add a tiny bit of water to that. Test it out. Looks pretty good. Dab it off on your towel. Pick up some more, dab it off. And then first you're gonna add it to the muzzle, face, and ossicones and ears, as you see in step 6's image. You can refer to your final reference image if you need to as well. Next, you'll want to add it to the bottom 3/4 of the neck, and then use a clean damp brush to move that paint up to the top of the neck to create a gradient. So I'm just going to go ahead and add it to the bottom 3/4 of the neck. Not being super exact, just adding the same general space, just like we did before. And then I'll clean off my brush. And it's clean and damp, and I'm just going to use some of that clean damp brush to move that paint from the top part of that 3/4 of the neck. And I'll just kind of move a little bit of that paint up to the top of the neck. So you'll see it adds a gradient from the very dark here to kind of the medium dark here, and then the lighter color here at the top. And I just clean my brush off, and then I'm going to pick up a little bit more, and I'm going to start adding it to this bottom part of the body, and then I'm going to start painting into the upper back and towards the hindquarters here. And I'm going to let the paint just kind of naturally run out of my brush. The paint pigment will kind of run out, and that will create a little bit of a natural gradient as well. So as you can see, it's starting to run out. It's creating a gradient. It's already running out a lot more than I wanted it to. I'm going to go ahead and pick up some more and then start again on the bottom where it's darker. And keep working that color, moving it towards the hindquarters. And you can see it's getting a little lighter as we're moving into the back because the paint pigment's running out in my brush since we've added it to the painting already. I'm going to pick up a little bit more, and I'm going to start adding that to the stripes, and I'll add it to the hooves and the tail and the hindquarters like you see in your image. And pick up more whenever you need it. I missed out on adding a little bit of the red color in the tail, and it's really apparent to me now that I added in the last color. And so I'm just going to go ahead and add it in there. There we go, that's a little bit better. Add around a little bit. And now I'll let this dry and move on to step 7. Step 7, add ink lines. So use the 005 black micron, the smallest tipped micron, to redraw and redefine the lines you transferred in step 1, except for the stripes like you see in 7A and your final reference image. And when redefining, it just depends on if you want the paint that landed outside of your lines, if you want to add that in or outside of the image. So it's a stylistic choice. So right here on the hind quarters, I'm going to just change that size a little bit, kind of going around the area where the paint landed outside of the lines. I'll be adding a thicker line later, so that'll cover up that white space a little bit too. This is meant to be relaxing, so put on a podcast, audiobook, some music, and just relax and redraw those lines. Next, use the 01 micron to thicken the ossicones, the inner eye, and the inner parts of the ears. And if you added the common name, go ahead and re-outline that and rewrite the scientific name as well. Lastly, use the 08 black micron, the thickest micron, to fill in the common name and to darken the ears and the hooves. And be careful when you use this not to run your hand over it immediately. It does tend to smudge while it's still wet. And then you want to also use it to thicken some lines throughout. And again, you can refer to your final reference image or your 7B image for placement. You want to include the muzzle, the lower jaw, the cheek, the nose, ossicones, the neck, the legs, the belly, back, and the tail. And anything else that you think needs to be thickened. We're done. Great job. You have created a painting unique to you. Next, you have a few options what to do with this painting. You can punch holes in it and add to your sketchbook, gift it, frame it, and display it around your house. Also, make sure to share it using the hashtag NatureCreator. If you have any questions or like to see a plant or animal featured in a future lesson, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you for joining me. I hope you had fun and had a chance to relax a little. Don't forget to click the like button, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and check out naturesketchcrate.com for future lesson crates.